In addition, as the Fed hikes interest rates to cool demand in the economy, more than half of small business owners say the recession has already begun, and Main Street sales outlook took a big hit. This is the biggest contributor to the new all-time low in confidence. So I think Lorena's telling me the chat is disabled, which I will work on in just a minute. But let's kind of jump into this conversation. We're going to cover a few different areas of how we believe you can thrive during these uncertain times. And these areas are really very much aligned with all the questions you all contributed to the conversation when you registered for this Business Growth Roundtable. So one of the things I love about working with Rachel Durkin, and one of the things I hate about working with Rachel Durkin, is, oh my goodness, can that girl move fast? So, Rachel, when COVID hit, and I've watched you over the last couple of years, you've made some lightning speed moves. Talk to us a little bit about, in this first segment where we're talking about planning to win, tell us what that looks like from your perspective.
I like that you led with love about, because most people lead with hate about that work with me. But so as much as it is in my DNA to move quickly, when a recession hits or uncertainty hits, a lot of people's initial reaction is to pull that turtle effect and hide in their shells and wait for it to come up. I got to cut spending. I gotta, save my cash. I got to get ahead of this. I've got to prepare. I've got to build my bunker. I believe strongly that is a huge mistake. And we lived it during COVID. When everybody else was hiding in their hidey hole, we doubled down. And there's studies that prove it. So think about it this way, and then I'll give you some real data to back it up. But while everybody else is cutting their budget or keeping it exactly the same, it is a no-brainer to double your budget or even increase it a tiny, tiny bit, and you will gain market share well ahead of everybody else as a result. So while everybody else is hiding, if you're simply not hiding, you're at an advantage. So a recession or uncertainty is the perfect time to be the shiny star. In fact, the McGraw-Hill Research did a study that analyzed 600 companies during the 2008 recession. And what they found was those companies that cut their budget only grew by 19% over the next 5 years. And those companies who stayed the same or invested a little bit more grew 275% over the next 5 years. So when I think of a recession or uncertainty, I see an opportunity. So if you are doubling down, there is an opportunity for growth.
Awesome. All right, and I think I just fixed the chat, Lorena, if you want to give that a try. These are really great points, Rachel, and I love the idea of moving quickly. And, we're going to talk a little bit later about focus and differentiation, and truly moving when everyone is standing still is kind of a huge differentiator, right? Mm-hmm. But the truth is, in order to sprint ahead, we need people. And we're in a down economy. Hiring is a bitch at best at the moment. I'm just calling a spade a spade. Laura Osborne, first of all, introduce us, tell your audience about yourself, and give us a little bit of an HR perspective on this.
Sure. Thanks, Donna. So I run Crothers Consulting, which is a boutique firm focused on people, leadership, and culture. We work with high growth, small and middle market firms to help them in those three areas. And we've been doing it for about 12 years now. And funny enough, as Rachel said, we were one of the companies that kind of doubled down during this recession. And over the last couple of years have grown 120%. So same kind of thing. That's why we're here today. So as we're talking about workforce planning and unemployment. So unemployment improved a little bit. It went from 3.5% to 3.7% in August. So I don't know if that swing is going to continue, but it's still at all-time lows. And what's really important from a human capital standpoint is workforce planning, understanding what your business plan is, what kind of, challenges you're going to see in this upcoming year, what kind of opportunities you're going to take advantage of, and what do you need the workforce to be to support that, We know that development is key to engagement. So are you developing your people to take on these new roles? Do you need new hires? Or on the other side, might your organization be needing to contract or needing to shift skills? One of our clients sees already that their business model has been slowing down. They think it's going to continue to slow down through this recession, but they don't want to lose their great people that they've taken so long to find, right? You know, in this crazy market. So we're looking at different skills training. How do you take people that are doing more customer service jobs today or onboarding jobs and move them to collections? How do you, help with skills to develop those people and make sure that through this, you keep that talent that you work so hard to engage, even if it's shifting? We look at time to fill for jobs, critical jobs. They're taking double what they used to. Sometimes you get lucky. We had a client the other day, we filled a job in 10 hours. Right? It really depends. How big is your circle? Where are you going to look? Do you want people in the office? All those things are going to contribute to your workforce plan as you lay it out for the next year. Another part of your plan might be, are you going to look at permanent full-time employees, or might you look at fractional employees or contract help to fill gaps for a shorter period of time? Or maybe the more senior positions. So there's lots of different design choices that I think are critical as you're entering this phase and looking every year at what the next year will bring.
I love that. There's so many nuggets in there. It's about planning. It's about cross training. I love the idea of resource planning. And we're going to talk throughout this panel today about leverage. And I think, cross training is a great way to leverage. And I also remember kind of looking back at, when COVID first happened, I personally looked back at 2009, 2010. I was like, all right, well, okay, what did that cost me? So, this turned out to be very different, but it was a place to start. And I was thinking, okay, operationally, marketing, finance, where can I plug and what can I do? And I remember at that time, one of my greatest challenges was that no one was making a decision. And I feel like in some senses, we're back there, right? So there was nothing I could do about no one making a decision, but I thought, well, what can I do with this kind of time? And one of the things I think we all need to do during this current climate is empower our people. And so for me, I couldn't do anything about what was going on in the market. I could only improve my own skills. And we all talk about investing in our people. And, Rachel talked about when she took Sandler, and I took Sandler in 2010. I went every week for a solid year, changed my whole trajectory. I chose to invest. So Cal, come to the stage. First of all, do a better job of introducing yourself than I did, and talk to us a little bit about empowering our people, because I think it's the other thing that we need to do at this point in time.
That's great. And Donna, I can never give a better introduction than clients who just say nice things about you. So I will just screw it up if I really go any further. Other than those who are not familiar with Sandler, I see some familiar faces and names. We, at our essence, are a sales, business development, management, and customer service training organization. A lot of people, they're pretty successful people that we work with. That's kind of one of my rules, and you can see some of them here, that they've had great success, but they're a little bit worried that some of their people aren't getting in front of enough of the right people. And I know that's a big thing for Rachel and her marketing efforts as well. We'll talk about that later. Or they're doing an okay job of that. But Donna, your point, people don't want to make a decision. How do we not waste time with people whose decision process we don't like? Or how do we shorten our sales cycle and get them to make a decision? And especially recently, and I'll tell a short story in a minute, there are a lot of managers who are scared to death. To Laura's point, we're going to lose people. There's the great whatever thing that everyone's calling it now, but do they really have the skills in this changing environment to effectively manage people and to manage their sales pipeline and that kind of a thing? So Donna, specifically when we were talking about empowering people, I was talking to a client, they've been management clients for years, and he said, Cal, I really need to do sales training for our two teams. And of course, in the Great Sandler questioning method, I said, John, why is that? He said, I'm scared to death I'm going to lose them. We've lost a couple. I want to sharpen their skills, and I want to prove to them that we're investing in them and we want them to be successful. And I want to train them so they can be more successful than their peers at our competitors. So they don't want to go there. So they have some skills. They're targeting the right folks. They're shortening their sales cycles, and they're getting bigger commissions. And I get to keep them. And I don't have to go retrain people, because everybody knows, and I'm sure Laura has way better stats than I do about what it costs to make a bad hire. I know in the sales world, our number is 9 times what you're going to pay them in about 6 months. And that's
Wait, repeat that. What was it?
The cost of a bad sales hire is 9 times what you actually would have paid them.
Not to mention what you have to pay for in wine to cope with it.
Yeah, and the stats on others are at least 3 times.
Yeah, so there are a lot of those things, and I was impressed by his foresight that he wanted to invest in the people as a retention tool. One little short piece I'll mention, and one of the things we're really focused on with that group is prospecting and prospecting behavior, and being focused on a lot of sales teams and people. They kind of wing it. They think everybody's their prospect. Who do you sell to? Oh, everybody. Well, that's not true. Again, I'll talk about a little more detail. So what are their very specific laser focused prospecting behaviors that they want to do?
And Cal, before I move on, I just want to come back to something you talked about. You talk about training on process, and that product knowledge is overrated.
We had that very conversation about 2 hours ago. The tendency, stereotypically, not we, but many people go in and they talk about their product, their service, why it's wonderful, why you should use us, not them, and nobody cares. They care, they don't care. We just hired about 4 youngish kids for a medical company, and they are killing it. They didn't know anything about it, but they were coachable, trainable, they had ambition and drive. They didn't make excuses, and they've got a fantastic, I'm biased, a fantastic sales process. We can teach them the product stuff. If they've got the behaviors, they've got the right attitude, the right belief systems, we can train them to do that. And they're going to stay with us because we made that investment in them.
Awesome. So I firmly believe, and I've always believed this, even before I lived through many up and down. I've been in business almost 30 years, but I believe there's an opportunity in every market, up, down, whatever it is, there is an opportunity. And, Rachel and I have talked about that many times, and I've seen her sprint ahead, and you heard about Laura and her successes. But I think another opportunity for all of us is always to invest in our people. But Laura, talk to us about who we should be investing in. I mean, we just heard the cost to hire, and then how do you know who to invest in on your team?
Well, I think some of it was what we talked about last in the cross training, right? You might need to make an investment there if you see your staffing model shifting from one area to the other. That would be one area that I'd invest in. But another one that we find 60% of all training dollars are invested in is management and leadership skills, not only for people that are currently in the roles, but for those up and comers. So those management and leadership skills are really key, Donna, and it helps them to feel confident that they're doing the right thing, and that they've got some little tips, little tools, little things that can make a big difference in the way they manage, which, as we know, your manager is a big reason for why people stay at a company or why they leave, right? It's not money. Anybody who says it's money, I mean, these days, sometimes there is a little bit of the money when it's double, but in general, people leave bad managers and bad cultures. They don't leave because of money. So helping train managers on skills like how to delegate, how to hold people accountable, how to give and receive feedback, right? And what to do with it when you get it. Those kind of little skills, everybody's like, yeah, those are the normal ones, but not everybody's good at those. And sometimes you can unlock something with just a tip or two. So that was during COVID, an area that we actually found lots of our high growth companies said, now it's time to invest. We've got money from travel budgets that we're not using. Let's use it to train our managers and leaders. How does somebody move from a manager to a leader? And what are those skills? So those are things we've seen. And people ask me all the time, how much of my budget should be spent on training? The national numbers are like 10%, but that's certainly some of the bigger firms as well. I see the more of the small middle market firms doing the 5 to 7% on training, training ourselves, like we all talked about with things like Sandler, and training our leaders and managers and team. So that's really, for me, some critical areas.
Well, I can really relate to that, because one of the things I'm finding is that as I have promoted people up, it's very hard for your great producers to become managers. So there's that shift. And this is a bit of a side note, and Cal, if you have an opinion, we can come back to this, but it's hard sometimes for them to shift their perception of what their value is. And even as the business owner, sometimes I get doing confused with leading as productive. For the longest time, I think I measured my own value by my output, and that no longer applies. That's off the table. So when you think about training these people to become leaders, are there some, and I think, I can coach my people, I can budget lots of time to coach my people, but I'm no longer really the best person to do it. So can you talk to us, and Cal and Laura, I'm going to throw this to either one of you. What are some of those resources that might be available to help those people who are moving up in the ranks of your company to step into those managerial and leadership roles?
Well, and Cal, we can bounce back and forth. I mean, there's management skills courses where, we've got a management 101, which is 6 modules to take people through the basic skills you need to know as a manager. And there's also 360 tools that you can kind of assess where you're at from a manager or from a leadership level, and looking at those different competencies between the two. So sometimes I think a start point is an assessment to understand where you're at, where your gaps are, where you want to go. And then you can build some plans or look for the right kind of training around it. Cal?
Awesome. Cal, what would you add?
Yeah, I don't know that I could say it any better than that. And I think we're all fans of assessments, some kind of a predictive assessment. I'll stick to the sales lane. I know absolutely. Now it's doable, because Donna was being a little skeptical word what I was going to say. Promoting, for example, a salesperson to sales manager. So let me understand, you're taking your best producer, your most consistent person, taking them out of the field and putting them in a situation where they get to manage people that they hate doing and doing administrative stuff. So now I have a lousy manager telling a bunch of people to go sell the way I sold. So generally speaking, that's not always a good idea. Now, an assessment, to Laura's point, will certainly help you figure that out. I've seen some succeed, and I've seen 80% not succeed. So wow. Same thing, Laura.
Awesome.
When you said that, Cal, my salesperson just messaged me and goes, see?
I know. And I think it's a whole nother panel conversation about hiring yourself as the owner. It's like, so what you think you should do right up until you realize it is a bad plan.
Luckily,
anyway.
People have no problem telling me what they're doing, so.
All right. So we talked a little bit about planning. We've talked about empowering people. Let's shift gears a little bit. Something I know for sure. When you try to do everything, or you try to stand for everything, you fall for everything. To me, focus is your number one business superpower. Warren Buffett says the difference between really successful people and successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. You may not be able to do that in your position, but I assure you, you should be saying no to more than you're currently saying no to. I believe our job as leaders is to figure out what are, it's the Pareto principle. What is your 20% that drives 80% of your results? So we have to figure out, especially in a down economy, what is our 20%? And I think that, when I think of focus, the thing I always come back to is less is more. do better, do less, better to completion. That's it. That is my entire formula. So Rachel, talk to us a little bit about how this shows up when you're sprinting to market.
Yeah. So when I say sprinting, it's very deceiving, right? Because that doesn't mean you should just like grab all your stuff and run and hope it works, because it will not. And you're so right on that 20% rule. In my opinion, marketing and going to market is three things. I mean, I'm generalizing here. It's target audience, message, and how you go to market, right? Your target audience and your message are so important. So obviously you need the right audience, right? Especially, and when there's uncertain times, we can, if we have time, Donna, we can talk more about this, but there's such an opportunity, because whenever there's a shift in an economy or in an industry or something, there's a desperate need, or what Cal would call a pain point, that presents an opportunity if you can catch it at the right time and analyze it and identify it. But I'll put that right here for a second. What's most important is building a message that will resonate. Hear that word, resonate with your target audience. So just your message on what we call value propositions or what you're good at is not good enough. It has to resonate. And I'm going to give you an example. I had a client there. I can talk about them now because they're a financial advisory firm and they actually got acquired. They did so well and grew so much with us that they got acquired. We'll just give us all the credit for that. But when we went to them, they were already well established. They had about 800 million in assets under management. They had a great PR strategy. They were on Barron's and CNBC, and they did great, great high level PR. And the owner was a really smart guy. And when I sat with him the first time, I said, tell me about your target audience. Who's your perfect client? And he told me it was somebody who didn't really understand, they were educated, but not educated in the financial industry. So, or it was spouses or children of those who made the money. So they wanted someone who was educated, but would rely on them to make the smart financial decisions, not try to do it themselves. Now, their audience is rather uneducated in financial services, yet all of their marketing mojo and messaging was on Barron's and CNBC and Forbes and talking about things that I would not understand if I were their target audience. So there was a huge disconnect in their message. They were talking about how smart they are, but it was going over the head of their target audience. And after some market research, we didn't uncover that immediately, but when we analyzed their audience and their wants and needs, we realized that there was a total disconnect. And so what was happening when they started working with us was they were getting hundreds of calls a day from all this press, but 80% were the wrong audience. And they were spending so much time filtering through the not qualified leads that they weren't able to sell the qualified. When they switched their message, he stopped going on those programs. Or if he did, he talked in a very different way. And we were very selective about the shows they were on. But when we switched our strategy, both how we went to market, but our message and who we were talking to, the calls shifted. 80% were qualified leads and 20% weren't. And so what you're saying and who you're saying it to is so important. So when I say sprint ahead, I mean it. But first do your homework and make sure you're sprinting in the right direction, because that has a huge impact on your success or failure. And you only have a short window to make it happen.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Cal, on that same line, talk to us, because I still am a Sandler President's Club member. I know the value of a prospecting plan, and I know the value of doing the behavior. So talk to us about, when we think about focus and less is more, talk to us about prospecting plans.
Good question. I love, because I hear Rachel say this all the time, which is why I love working with Paradigm. By the way, one of our three of us common clients happens to be on the call. He just got bought too. So, just could it be a trend? Could it be coincidence? I don't know.
I think not.
but Rachel's always wants to be very laser focused, do the market research. What is the message? Now, the marketing message and the sales message are a tiny bit different, because the 80% of those great leads, now I'm going to lead with a pain-based conversation, which is, I'm not going to show up like the financial folks and say, well, we do this and you're probably not very educated, so we can help you, which makes them feel dumb. What I might say is, really glad to meet you. Not sure if I can and be of help, but a lot of the folks in your situation come because they're a little afraid that they're going to take their parents' fortune and not manage it as well as they did and not leave it to their kids. Others we heard recently, they're scared to death that their kids are going to come back and live with them because they're going to have all kinds of college debt. So now the prospect's going, oh, it's exactly how I feel. How did you know that? Well, we know that because we know that's the pain, or those are the problems they have. So specific to prospecting, let me talk about the CARE model. It's, and those of you who are note takers that Donna suggested earlier, write down these 4 letters if you want to. K, A, R, and E. And we call that the CARE model. K is keep, A is attain, R is recapture, which means I lost them and I want to get them back, or they went dark and I want to fish them out. And E is expand. Expand is I'm doing a marketing plan for these folks, but I'm not doing their SEO and I should. Right, Donna, another Pareto is 80% of our clients only know 20% of what we do. Shame on us.
Yeah, very
So
true.
in the CARE model, K is for keep. These are the people that we love, that are great clients. They're not going to grow much more, but we don't want to lose them. So your exercise, your homework is write down the characteristics of those clients you want to keep. Here's a hint, they won't all make the cut. We can't show, well, I know it'll be 100% here. Anybody ever fired a client? It's a beautiful thing. Wrong fit, argumentative, don't take our advice, want us to do it their way, not our way, right? That's not a good fit. Unfortunately, we usually figure that out later. But now we should all know enough characteristics of those to keep. Attain, that's going to be similar. Attain, they're going to have all the characteristics of keep, but maybe they've got growth opportunity. Maybe they've got a growth mindset. Maybe they're sprinting ahead like all of us did when things saw a downturn. We saw opportunity, as did our clients. Those are the people ideally we want to. I don't want to go burn a bunch of my time. I won't do that calculation, but whatever your time is worth, which is somewhere between $500 and $2,000 an hour if you're the owner of a company. What's your time worth spending on those leads that are not qualified or those that are in your target market? Recapture, and I love this with our clients, now that you've been in Sandler for 3 months, go find all those people. You've got new skills, you ask questions instead of telling them. And I got that from a client. He said, I got 30% of those 50 people back that I didn't get the first time. And expand, and I love Laura's comments about, are we expanding roles of some of our people in account management? And I know Rachel's folks do this. Their account managers and their project managers are responsible for selling. Are they able to ask for introductions? Are they able to upsell and cross-sell? Are they listening for pain? Do they know how to ask questions? So that's the expand piece. People in the accounts, and I know there's an engineering firm on, they've got sales engineers and people that do the actual engineering work, who are their kind of sneaky folks asking questions and finding other projects while they're in there working with them. So define what all those things look like, and you'll be way, way more efficient and effective in your prospecting behavior.
Do we have time for me to add one thing to that, if I'm quick?
We always have time.
You're like, no, she's giving me the eye. No, I'm just kidding. So I cannot reinforce what Cal said enough. And one of the things that's most important in your marketing strategy, every client comes to us and they want new leads. And of course, we're going to work on that, right? And we're going to work on bringing the new guys in. But the cheaper option, the cheaper sale is your current clients. It is so much cheaper. The ROI is so much higher. And the closing rate is so much higher on a cross-sell, upsell. And I cannot encourage you enough as an if you have an organization, to encourage your account team members to be trained in some capacity to just hand off a sale. I can't tell you, we put that in every marketing plan we do, and we get so much pushback on it because the account managers don't want to do it. It's got to be part of the culture, because you are leaving so much money on the table, like cheap money. It blows my mind. So something to think about, that reattain strategy or that cross-sell strategy is such a missed opportunity because of the organization infrastructure and change management.
Yeah, that's great, Rachel. And we put that in all the whether they like it or not, that's in the prospecting plans that we help our managers and sales teams develop, because it is such an easy, it's low-hanging fruit, as they say.
Well, I agree with everything that you said. And I think, Cal, you talked about, identifying the pain or knowing what the pain, as I grew my organization, I had to make sure that the gals who are at the front desk and answering the phone, they need to know what pain looks like, because honestly, they have a more frontline relationship with my clients than I do at this point. So I have to teach them what pain looks like so that I can't tell you how many cross-sell and upsells we've done over the last 2 years because of COVID, and strategically saying, okay, everybody's selling, everybody's looking for leads. I mean, and it's not that everyone's selling, it's that everyone knows what the pain looks like, and hey, you might want to have a conversation with us on blah, blah, blah. So I totally agree with that. Now, so we're talking about target market, and I like to up level what the two of you just said. You know, I think you all know you have to identify your target market and create a persona and an avatar of who are they and where are they, and that's how we drive new leads. But in the spirit of expanding our current business, I really believe the 20% is finding the centers of influence and the referral sources. So just like you have to get really, really clear on who your end user is and who your target market is and isn't, I think you also have to get really clear on who your centers of influence are and how you can, you know, up level that to drive more leads for you. Because I love all these numbers everyone's throwing out, and I'm going to make this one up, but I'll bet you your referrals probably close at somewhere between a 70 and a 90% close ratio. And I know my cold leads that come off internet, I'm happy when I get a 10%. So, you know, really get clear on that target market. And when we talk about, you know, less is more, make sure that part of what you're doing are working on driving those referrals. And I learned how to drive those referrals and ask for those referrals at, let me repeat, Sandler Sales. Anyway,
That's very nice. Not 87% of statistics are all made up, but I agree with you.
Well, listen, I told you I made it up. So the other thing is, as we kind of focus on this concept of less is more, and we're talking about equipping our team, Laura, you know, you mentioned before that, you know, people don't leave for money, they leave because of culture. And I believe that to be very true. I also believe that we all need to get clear on our why, because people do business with us because of why we do what we do, not necessarily what we do. And I think we attract our team members because they believe in what we believe. So talk to us a little bit about, in this current climate, how are we helping our teams to be successful? How are we keeping them engaged and motivated? Talk to us from that kind of HR perspective.
Sure. You know, and I think as we're doing statistics, you know, retention and development go hand in hand, right? So we've been talking a lot about developing your sales team, developing your leaders. You know, 40% of retention statistics are around people looking for development. So I think for culture, it's getting super clear on what's your business plan, what's your culture and the values that you want to drive through your organization. And then literally, Donna, everything you do in HR should wrap around and support your business plan and those values to drive culture. So from how do you recruit people? How do you onboard people? How do you treat people when they leave? Treating people when they leave that's aligned with your culture is just as important as onboarding them. How do you keep a
100%.
network of the people that have left, right? A lot of us are New Jersey firms, and sometimes early in the career, somebody wants to go to a big New York firm, get that experience. How do you keep that door open so that maybe a bit later when they have a family and he wants to coach the football team and be home at 4:30 or 5, they start to think about coming back? You know, so how do you keep, that's one thing we've been talking a lot in this current market. How do you create that network of people that understand your culture, that will talk about it to others, even if they're no longer with you? So there's so many pieces to it, right? Retain, how do you pay people? You know, or what are you going to focus on? We talk about, is it more fixed, more variable? Do they like the entrepreneurial spirit? Is that a big part of your organization? If so, your reward structure has to be different, you know, with entrepreneurial spirit. And how do you link it all to performance management? So everything you do needs to be aligned with your business plan and your culture and values, every single piece of HR. So downloading something from a website probably not the best thing. Downloading it and then customizing it a little bit to fit your culture, your values, that's where it all drives that engagement, and staying on top of people, Donna, right? I think we've all been surveyed to death the last few years, but you still, even if they say, oh, the survey responses aren't as much, you're going to hear from the people that are really happy and really miserable and kind of know everybody else is in the middle. It's still good data. Staying on top and understanding if what you're trying to do is landing, right? And being able to adjust. I'm not going to use the word pivot, adjust when it's not.
Yeah. That's great. And you talked about culture, and, you and I have had the culture conversation for far longer than most people have been having the culture conversation. And I think that when a firm gets clear on their mission, values, vision, what do we do? What do we stand for? Where are we going? In really simple terms. It is really powerful. And you talk about the HR piece, and that is your internal messaging. But I believe that same mission, values, vision language lands in your external messaging. And I think it's a way to keep everything aligned. And that is, I believe in the end, when we attract like valued people, the close ratio goes up, the turnover goes down, and it's all really, it sounds a little touchy-feely, but it's actually very, very bottom line oriented. So kind of flipping back to bottom line a little bit, one of the questions we had a lot, and we get this all the time, when you register for this event, we ask you, what is your greatest business growth challenge? And they definitely fall into a couple of buckets, and pipeline is always one of them. So Cal, talk to us a little bit about kind of the pipeline, the funnel review. What should we be doing in this uncertain time to actually grow our businesses?
Love that question. And, I'm like a political debate. I'm going to go back to something Laura had said. It's interesting, and I think this is someone Laura knows. The CEO of a company called me the other day and said, "You're not going to believe what just happened. You remember the employee we fired a month ago? They just gave us a referral and said we'd be a great company to work with." So it was a very nice exit strategy. And I won't tell the other story. So pipeline. So for those who are not familiar with pipeline or sales funnel, those are the potential business that you see out there that you've spoken to, that you hope, some people hope, they smoke hopium, they hope that they're going to bring those in. So how do I manage that? And I love the culture conversation, because how do I make sure my sales team, my account management team, my technical team, are they accountable for their behaviors? So you all know, the 3-4 of you, Katie, certainly, we haven't mentioned Katie. Katie is a Sandler person as well, but we focus on measuring behaviors and tracking behaviors. I can't control what my prospect or customer is going to do. I have no control over that. I can only control one thing, and those are the actions I take. If you want to get into the psychology, I can't control what I'm thinking, and I can't control what my response is, internal response, but I can control my action. So we need to, in the world of sales or business development, keep that funnel clean. Meaning, if I'm a sales manager, and I'm sure Rachel does this, but it's a heads up to her sales team, if they say, "Oh, it was a really good meeting, Rachel," she goes, "Great. What was the problem? Can we fix it? What are the next steps? What's the clear future?" I don't care if you had a good meeting, that meant you felt good. That's not what a good meeting is. So I want to be very honest. So when you have some workflows, maybe in your CRM, for example, there are certain gates I need to get through in order to make sure that these are real dollars that might come in, so I can forecast. Do I know enough about the people involved in the decision-making process? Did I get inserted in the right spot? Who are the players? What are their disc profiles? How do they like to communicate? What is the problem they're having? We talk about pain. You've both mentioned it. Pain is a personal, emotional reason for change. Personal being key. I don't know if anybody else has multiple people involved in their decision-making process when they're selling. Each individual has a different pain, the owner and the marketing manager, the CEO and the HR director. They all have different problems. We have to listen for that, and they need to document it. What's their pain? Have I quantified the pain? What's it costing them? Is it important? Are they committed to fixing it? By the way, I haven't done any presenting yet because I can't do that. Do I understand their decision process? Do I want to participate in an RFP with 6 companies? Probably not. So what are all those things that I need to understand? Now, I need to have in a sales meeting or whatever you call it, everybody's going to be on the same page. These are going to be the tough questions I'm going to ask as a sales manager or as a leader. Tell me about the facts, give me the data. And so it's all about accountability, I think, really in there, and having the tools to measure it, by the way.
The tools are so important. Cal and my workflow strategist did a webinar a while back called Successful Cyber Selling. And in it, and this is a real stat, a CRM system can increase your closing rate by 300%. So having tools and data to hold accountability is so important, especially in the world of sales.
Yeah,
Completely agree. Yeah,
and
I mean,
one of the things, and I know Lorena has done this with some of our mutual clients, is, oh, we're ready to make the presentation. Oh, no, you're not. Because one of the criteria in their thing is, do we have these people in the room? And by the way, we don't just send presentations or proposals. We have a face-to-face and we discuss them in person. And that just happens to be our process. If we can't do that, then I'm afraid it's just not going to work. And people, I can't say we are being recorded, but people have bodily function malfunctions when they say that, but yet then they go do it. And their close rate, I think, about triples are my stats.
Yeah. That's great stuff. Okay, so we're almost at Q&A. So if you have questions for any of us, please enter them in the Q&A section, because it is a little, I'm good at this, but it's a little hard to moderate a panel and watch the chat window. So if you put it in the chat window, do me a favor and go back and put it in Q&A. And then we'll go to Fix It in 5. But before we go there, Cal, I love how you talk about that. And I will share just one of my most favorite things I learned, and I do in every qualifying situation, is I say to people, listen, we're going to talk. This might make sense for you. It might not. I just want you to know it's okay if you say no. This is not personal. This is business. And I cannot tell you the hours and hours and hours of follow-up and frustration that has freed me of. It's kind of the same thing as saying, listen, we present in person, and if that doesn't work for you, it's so empowering. And you're right, it is really hard to do at first, but I think it is a form of focus and leverage, and it also sets the tone for the potential relationship.
And it is the leverage, Donna, for sure. It's the leverage of having an abundance mentality versus a scarcity mentality. What that telegraphs to the person you're talking to, they're like, well, they're not here to sell me something. They want to have a conversation, and they can take me or leave me. I guess I need to convince them I want to work.
Brings the wall down. Yeah.
Right. So, Rachel, before we go to Q&A or Fix It in 5, and I'm going to actually ask this for each of you. Rachel, I'm going to go Rachel, and then I'm going to go Cal, and then I'm going to go Laura. And I didn't tell them I was going to do this, so you can all watch them squirm.
I'm excited. I like how I'm going first.
Okay, so I am also very, very big on, when you feel overwhelmed, what is the singular next right thing you should do? So I'm going to ask that question of each of you. As we face the fourth quarter, the end of 2022, God willing, the end of a pandemic, and we're going to be in this economic uncertainty for a while. Rachel, what is the next right thing you recommend our audience does?
So from a marketing standpoint, you want to fill the auditorium. It's always the fallback, and it's always the right move. So what I mean by that is, pretend you own an auditorium with 1 million seats, and you can stay on the stage whenever you want, and you can say whatever you want. And if the auditorium is empty, you look like a psycho. If the auditorium is filled with the wrong people, you raffle off an iPad to get people in your auditorium. It doesn't matter what you say. If the auditorium is filled with the right people who care about your product or service and your right audience, you're not selling them, but they're in the auditorium, then when you have something to say, it matters. And that's what I call brand assets. That is your CRM database being filled up with people who care about the information you share. It's your social media. It's your website hits. The people on average takes 9 to 13 touches to build trust in a brand. And boy, does it save the sales team time when marketing and automation can facilitate those, 1 through 9 touches. So I'll tell you a very quick case study on this. When COVID hit, 3 weeks in, we have a client who, they'd get mad at me if I said this, so don't tell them, but they're similar to Zoom. They're a telecom company. They have a more secure version of communication, video communication for companies. They can, and they work through a partner program. They'd been working with us for years, and we had spent years building up their auditorium with people who would care what they had to say, trainings, modules, videos, information. When COVID hit, it was brilliant. I wish I thought of it. The owner came to me and said, I want to offer our service for 3 months to anybody who wants it, you know, in light of this. He looked like a really nice guy, but we also know that when people adopt technology, they stay on it. And because his auditorium was filled, I sent one email, and in one day, he had 100 new people sign up. And it's because we had spent years filling the auditorium. If he asked me to do that without the auditorium, I would have told him, you need to give me $10,000 and I need to run ads about it. And it still wouldn't have been as successful as fast as it was. So if there's nothing else that you know to do right now, if you're still planning or figuring out your message, fill your auditorium, because it is the best asset that you can have.
Awesome.
Wow.
Cal, what is
Boy,
I know you get to follow that. Sorry.
Your turn.
What is
That's difficult. I'm not often speechless. So Rachel gave me a little different context. There's a book by a guy named Keith Cunningham, and it's called The Road Less Stupid. Sounds a little inflammatory, but one of the things he talks about that's been great for me, if I'm overwhelmed, I go take a walk and get some thinking time. I don't take notes. It's sit and think, or I'll go sit on the deck and think for a little while. Now, if I've got some fear, or I've got an ugly funnel, or a pipeline, or I've got something else, we have a saying, you can behave your way out of a funk or a slump or anything. Go do some behaviors. Pick up the phone, call your mother, call an old client. I like fill the auditorium, go do some kind of a speaking thing that puts people in pain. That's my favorite thing, right? Don't give me a microphone. It could be bad for you. Do that kind of a thing. The other is, and you get a lot of traction from this and you'll be shocked. 2 things: send close the file emails, which would sound something like, Rachel, haven't heard from you for a couple of weeks. I'm guessing you've probably decided to go in a different direction. That's perfectly fine. I'm easy to find if you want to continue the conversation. Done. And I had a client yesterday, they had 5 responses to something very similar. And there's another one that you get, and this is my challenge. I just put it in the chat. It's a 9-word email. I did not invent it. It's a 10-minute exercise. Are you still interested in blank? It's not very Sandlery, but are you still interested in blank? We do this in our Mastery President's Club, and we'll take 15 minutes. I'll put that up on the board. Everybody pulls out their computer and they write 10 emails. They get phone calls, they get emails within 15 minutes sometimes. So it makes you feel better if nothing else, but it'll get you out of that funk. And if you're overwhelmed, it gives you a little direction.
Awesome. Thank you, Cal. Laura, what do you recommend our audience do as the next right thing?
So similar to Cal, my first step is breathe. So honestly, find whatever works for you, but if you breathe deeply, slowly, hold it for as long as you can, and then blow it out slowly, do that a couple times, because I think people need to remember to breathe as we're running 100 miles an hour or ducking into the turtle shell, right? Breathe. Next, I think from a leadership standpoint, remember that what we learned over the last couple of years is that being an empathetic leader and having that relationship with your team was key to companies that weathered COVID. So don't turn that off. Continue to ask your people how they are. Be human, care about them, listen again, and communicate. And so I think that for me, those are probably the main things I would say right now.
Awesome. So I'm going to add my next one thing before we have a Q&A, and then we'll go to Fix It in 5. Kind of along the lines of what Cal was saying, I would love to see you create a list of what you want to think about and block time to think. And I want to encourage you to remove as much as you possibly can from your calendar. Really assess, do I need to do this? Or is there someone else in my organization that can get this done? And does that person maybe need some training or something? So I think it's about focus and delegation. And I think that if you can do that, and I also believe, like Rachel said, fill the audience. I would imagine that most of you have a pretty full audience. Go deep rather than wide. Call those people you haven't talked to. All those. A year after you lose a proposal, hey, just checking in. How's it going with the new vendor? I mean, I don't think I'd wait a year, but I think there's a lot that you can do with what you already have without going out there and trying to reinvent the wheel. So,
Hey, Donna.
yes.
Can I add one more thing? You made me
Sure.
think of a
Sure.
to-do. If you were going to walk away and do one thing after you breathe, write 5 people on your team notes. Write them a note, shoot them an email, something that they have that's tangible to let them know why you appreciate them or something they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. Okay, we have one question from Michael Rosen. Michael wants to know, what type of personality test do you recommend when evaluating prospective sales personnel?
Well, there are a number of them out there, and it's some kind of a predictive analytics, not necessarily a personality test. Right, we talk about this. I don't care what their personality styles. I have some C styles that are better salespeople than the I's, because the I's talk too darn much, like me. The one I happen to use is called Outmatch. I know Laura's got some different things that she uses, but it's something that gives an objective view, not because I like them, but because they have that ambition and drive. They don't make excuses. They take action. That tests for things like that are, we're not going to be able to be objective about it.
So I'll add predictive index is one that can help you on the hiring end. And then once they come on board, you can work with it around your department and how to work with that person, how this role will interact with different roles. So
Awesome.
Takes it a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, I've used DISC, I've used Strength Finders, Clifton Strength Finders. And the truth is, again, when I first started doing assessments, I was looking for me. But if there were 2 of me in my company, that really would not go well. So I learned that I was trying to build a well-rounded team, and they didn't all have to behave like I do or whatnot. But so let me welcome our sponsor, Kim Luthi from Synthesis Wealth. That is hard. That is a bit of a tongue twister, Kim. You're muted. So Kim, unmute yourself. And Kim is joining us for our Fix It in 5 segment. Kim's going to present a little challenge, and she's going to get the benefit of our knowledge. And listen, if you have something to lend Kim, throw it in the chat window. It takes a village, and we don't pretend to think we know it all. So Kim, talk to us a little bit about kind of what your challenge is and how we can help you.
First of all, I'm not sure if you can fix it in 5 minutes, but I appreciate the time. You guys are all fantastic experts.
Wait, I love
field.
a challenge. You know me. I love a challenge.
No, you're like, we can bang this out in 8 minutes or less. Donna was asking me, are there any challenges that you have? And of course I do. I've been in business for 34 years and successful, and things are going well, but I'm also a student of trying to improve things. So one of the things I have going on right now, I have a staff person that's going to be a year now with me, which is fantastic. Things are going well. And I'm listening to everything you guys are saying. And it's funny because I did Sandler 30 years ago, and I'm doing it again now, right? These are all life lessons that this is a great refresher if you haven't done things, and opportunity to kind of tune it back up. So how can I help to support her in her growth? The first year in our business, a lot is learning the processes and, fine tuning them, working the CRM, which we do pretty well, I think. But, she's coming up on a year, and I want her to continue to grow. What are some of the things I can do to support her?
And Laura, when we were preparing, we talked a little bit about that we didn't really get to talk too much about during the panel, kind of performance planning, and maybe that's something you can touch on here.
And I should say I'm a financial advisor, and that's another thing that we're going to talk about. And that Fix It in 5 is differentiating myself in the market, which I've been evolving and have continued to do so over the years. But this is a new kind of world that we're living in, and a lot of this is done virtually. I actually had a face-to-face with a client at 10:30 this morning, which is odd. You know, I had never met her, and she's been a client since April of last year. I'm like, nice to finally meet you. So, you know, we're both working mainly virtually. How can we help to up-level my business as a financial advisor, and how can I support my staff person in that process?
Yeah, so from a performance management and development standpoint, Kim, I always say to everybody, start by asking everybody, what did you love in the last year working with me? What did you really love? And what did you loathe? What did you really hate to do? And why? And so you're going to get some really good information about what drives them, because it's not always, you know, money. Sometimes it's development, sometimes it's opportunity, right? So you'll get some information about what they love and why they loved it. And then think about ways, how can you accentuate what they love? How can you capitalize on it? How can you develop that more? How can you take another branch on that area they love? Because you already know it's what they're hungry for. So finding ways to then create a plan that would work around development for that. And maybe sometimes when you find out what somebody hates, maybe it's something that could be automated. Maybe it doesn't even need to be done. Maybe it could go to someone else. And so I find ways to continue to engage people are ways to capitalize on their strengths and remove the things you can that they really hate. And by doing that, you're going to start up-leveling them to do some of the, you're going to find out maybe she loves working with the clients, right? And a piece of something that you don't like anymore is kind of boring to you. Give her some more of that. So I think you can develop that plan when you learn from them, you know, what they need, in addition to what your business plan is. Looking at that workforce plan, what do I think I need? You know, and you kind of layer those together.
It's funny, you mentioned earlier in our comments, someone was talking about the right questions, empowering her maybe to ask more specific questions to clients. At this point, for the first year, it's been more about just the servicing part of it, and not finding, I need someone to help me find other opportunities, and maybe ask questions that I forget to ask, or that isn't necessarily, you know, there might be a way that she can find opportunities that I'm not thinking of.
Yeah,
and one
especially
thing,
if it's something she likes.
yeah, I would add to that, Kim, and I say this to all my clients that I'm working with who are trying to up-level their teams and up-level their businesses. When you meet with your team, whether it's an individual or 25 people, is there anything you see me doing that only I do that you think you can do?
Love that.
What do you see me doing that you think you might be able to do? Because we assume a lot, and we could be right, and we could be very, very wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, Donna. That's right. I ask that to my office manager once a month. What am I doing that I shouldn't be doing that you would like to do, or you think you should be doing?
And on the
Yeah,
flip
maybe
side,
a
what
bigger
am I
delegation-
doing that makes your job harder?
That's a
Harder.
good one.
That's a hard one to ask.
We've had those conversations, and
You know,
that,
like my barrage of 3 a.m. emails, what? That's not working for you?
well,
I know
she's-
my team says they turn me off at night.
yeah, yeah.
When the other challenge that you run into as you grow, or at least I've run into as I've grown, is one job turns into 3 and you don't realize it's happening. And that can be really dangerous. And you can lose good people that way. So one thing I always revisit back to basics is like reread the E-Myth, and where they talk about like building out your org chart, and, you know, you're writing your name in a lot of these jobs, and maybe your gal's name is in 2 of those positions. As you continue to grow and maybe need more help, being that she was the first employee, she gets to pick and choose and shuffle where she wants to be. So it's about long-term planning too.
Right. So before we have to wrap up, the other thing Kim asked about, and I'm going to throw this one to Rachel and Cal. I love you, Kim. You're a financial planner, but I have gone to networking events and sat at a table with all financial planners. Like, that literally happened to me once. And I do believe that picking a financial planner is probably not unlike choosing a therapist. It's a very, very personal relationship. But Rachel, talk to Kim a little bit about differentiation.
Yeah, so there's two go-to strategies when you're in a professional service agency, especially a competitive industry like you are in. One is the thought leadership. You've got to show that you're smarter than the other guy, and it seems so wasteful, to write, I'm going to write another blog, or I'm going to do a webinar, but to be out there, to be speaking, to raise your visibility and show that you know what you're talking about is so important. We had one financial advisory client where we said every Monday, do a live podcast or a live, Facebook Live on the markets and just comment on it. And it just gets your name out there that, oh, she's paying attention to what's going on in the world more than I am. And so one is raising your visibility. This is an example of offense versus defense, because in marketing, we have offensive moves where, we're differentiating concepts, or we're shining above. And then we have defensive moves where you've got to do what the other guys are doing, because if you're not, they're going to score on you every time. And so that is kind of falls in the world of defense, but you can turn that defense into an offense if you do it well. The second thing, and in a creative way, the second thing is find your niche. We have financial advisors we work with that work with the 5 to 25 million, and that's all they do. We have others that only want to work with, generational or entrepreneurs. Pick 2 or 3 niches. Maybe it's women, maybe it's entrepreneurs, and drive it hard. Because when you have a niche in your industry, you can differentiate. Don't be all things to all people. Your message can be specific. Your background can be specific. Your thought leadership can be specific, and your targeting strategy when you're building your funnel will be specific. It makes having those people on your team, like who are doing prospecting for you, makes it a lot easier when you've got specificity. I don't know if that's a word, but get really clear and specific, and then get that message right, and then push that market hard would be my recommendation.
Awesome. Cal, any thoughts?
Yeah, differentiation. Kim and I have discussed this, and I think she knows this one is we have a Sandler rule, a little different than what Rachel's saying, but this is in the sales versus the marketing side, or along with the marketing side. If your competition's doing it, stop doing it right away. Like the message. What does a financial advisor say every single time? Right? If we have that pain-based, I was speaking with somebody the other day, and they were saying they're scared to death that their kids are going to move home after college because they got so much college debt. Or two or three of those pain-based things when you're in a conversation with somebody, and you can just slip them in conversationally, but it's not, well, we do this and this. I help businesses. Everybody helps families is the worst thing in the world, because you sound like everybody else, and people shut down as soon as they hear it.
I know.
And man, is this moment right now perfect for financial advisors? There's so much pain.
1,000%, 1,000%. Yeah. I know. And then people who know me, if you're at an event and someone introduces themselves and they say, and I'm a full service, you can literally see my eyes roll back in my head. Like, that is so not compelling. The only thing I would add to that, Kim, and I liked what Rachel said about get on there and interpret the markets. I believe, and this is for everyone, I think curation is the new king of content. There's too much content out there. So if you can curate, if you can give your people a little bulleted, here's what happened last week in our world, I think you'll be doing them a great service, and you become a real go-to resource. So I hope you found that helpful, Kim. I hope you have a couple of action items.
Yeah, I love bullet points, and I think everybody else too. Like our attention span is not what it used to be. Right. So I actually was writing my updated next quarterly plan, and part of it was doing 2 blogs a week, because I also looked at my life circle, and one of the things that are suffering is my creativity. So it gives me an opportunity to fill in my creativity bucket and provide content to build, to add that thought leadership. So I'm good.
And there's the concept of leverage. I believe anything you do should check at least 3 boxes, never just 1 box. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
This was great. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now for next month, when we will be talking about, are you leaving money on the table, and how you can use LinkedIn to prevent that from happening. If you are interested in grabbing this Fix It in 5 spotlight next month, you can email me, donna@donna-miller.com, and I will get you ready for that. So with that, closing thoughts, closing remarks, anyone?
Get out there and do it, take action. And I've got an invitation, if that, can I give an invitation, Donna? Is that allowed?
Is that a thinly veiled self-promotion? Of course you can. That's why we're here.
It's not thinly veiled in any way. The Sandler Virtual Summit is coming up on the 22nd, and to everybody here attending, thanks for coming. And I'm putting in the chat here, you can copy and paste it. It's a free ticket to the Sandler Summit on the 22nd.
Awesome. Thank you all. Laura, thank you very much. Cal, Kim, Rachel, Katie, NJBIA, always great. Take action. And I always say that, knowledge is not power. If you applied knowledge is power. So take one thing away today, put it into action, and we hope that you will see better results from that, and it will contribute to your business growth, because that is what we're here to talk about every month. Arrivederci, everyone. Have a great day.